Hello and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. We have a very special show today and we're 30 minutes earlier than usual, so hopefully folks got the memo. Our guest is Ali Velshi, Chief Correspondent of MSNBC. He's also the author of Small Acts of Courage, A Legacy of Endurance and the Fight for Democracy. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer of the show. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and our Digimentors website. We're also live on Instagram, on Sri's channel, my channel, and our Digimentors account. For everyone who is catching the replay, thank you for watching. Feel free to comment wherever you're watching, on Facebook, on YouTube, etc. We'll see the comments later, and we'd be happy to respond. In addition to having Ali Velshi on the show today, we also have a special insert in the New York Times from New York Times Cooking that you won't want to miss. So please settle in. Please retweet, like, share, comment, do all the things that you do on social so that folks will see the show. Want to give a shout out to our first person who got the memo, 8 a.m. start time, my mom, saying good morning, Ali and friends. And I know that my mom is a big fan. So at least we're not alone here, 8 a.m. Eastern time. I will point out that Ali is on the West Coast, as is Doug Levy, who's joining from California. He's thrilled to hear today's discussion for both of them. It is 5 a.m. Eastern time. We always appreciate when folks join us early. Jonathan is joining us from the East Village. Jonathan, thank you so much, as always, as is Ken Fisher, joining from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 7 a.m. his time. Now, let's bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan. Sri, good morning.
Good morning. I am so excited. It's not normal to be excited at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but I'm super excited because of Ali Velshi. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. If you're watching live or later, this is the Sunday New York Times Read Along. We read newspapers because we believe in fighting misinformation and disinformation, and Ali does that every day on his shows. And we also talk about other newspapers. It's not just about the Times, it's about understanding the value of news and information and journalists and journalism. And we will be looking at the paper with Ali, just showing you very quickly the headlines. Russia wrestles with recruiting women for war. Campuses give history lessons about activism. And that's a photo of a disruption at the University of Michigan graduation. And could the COVID-19 vaccines have caused some people harm? And this is by Apurva Mandavilli. And this is a piece that looks at the number of injuries that have happened. It always happens with any vaccine. The number is something like 13,000 out of 270 million people vaccinated in the United States. So it's a very small number. But of course, if you've been injured, that's a big story. And of course, the subject of a lot of misinformation and disinformation. We want to thank our sponsors of this show. We're very grateful to our friends at Muckrack for supporting us all of these years. We've been doing this for 8 years, and we're very grateful to them for supporting us. The show, of course, is put together by Digimentors, the company that Neil and I work at, and we do shows like this for people around the world. Plus, we do marketing, PR, training, a lot of AI workshops, AI policy. Contact us if you want to learn more about this. One of the shows we do that's really important, Neil hosts twice a month a show called Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. And Kate Easton is going to talk about parenting a child with mental health challenges. You don't want to miss this coming Thursday. Thank you, Neil, for talking about these very important issues. We have a lot of ground to cover and we have a lot to talk about. So we want to make sure we can get Ali on right away. He's joining us, as you heard, at 5 a.m. in California. So to prep you, this is a man who needs no introduction, but we are going to show you a little bit of what he does on TV.
I'm Ali Velshi, live outside the heavily fortified capital. Live in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Live this morning from Fort Myers Beach, Florida, one of the cities that was hardest hit by Hurricane Ian. Look at this. This was all a beach. The storm and the flooding is what the story is going to be. Let's just listen. The sirens are now underway in Kyiv. The city of Kyiv is under attack. Is it even conceivable that Russia could invade a NATO state? We will pray for your father. You're not alone.
Thank you.
You're not alone for sure. Thank you for being with us.
Can I hug you?
If the United States were to take a more aggressive military stance against Iran, much of it would come from right here in Qatar. It's hard not to come to the conclusion that the White House is absent a strategy on Turkey and Syria and possibly the broader Middle East. We are 2.5 miles from Gaza, and in fact, we just saw an interception. You can tell from the shape of this crater that came in over here. This is the point of impact. What is the thing that you would want her captors to know?
We're waiting for him.
Do you think the conviction of Derek Chauvin was justice?
I think justice would have been not seeing George Floyd murdered.
Step back, get back, get back, get back. Your head, he's head. They're now moving toward us. They're now moving toward us.
Today's meeting of the Velshi Band Book Club is underway. Joining me now is the hugely celebrated author Margaret Atwood, the incomparable George Takei, the prolific Jodi Picoult.
Thank you so much for starting this band book club.
You are an OG in this fight.
This is essentially the doomsday threshold for global warming. Even a fraction of a degree can have blistering consequences. Americans want gay and lesbian, trans and non-binary people to be able to live their lives because no one wants to live in an America that is not free. And when freedoms are taken from some of us, then none of us are free. Velshi starts now.
Velshi starts now. Let's bring on the great Ali Velshi. How are you, Ali?
Amazing to be with you, my old friend. For a long time, we've been friends. And the folks watching this should know you've been a mentor to me for a long time. And, you know, back when I started, when you and I got to know each other, you know, almost 2 decades ago, there weren't a lot of people who could be mentors to me who had some sort of shared experience. So it means so much to me to be on with you this morning.
Wow, I'm so touched, Ali. One of the things I had to do this morning was dress up. I had to put on a jacket, put on my pocket square because you're one of the best dressed people on television. And so I had to up my game. Folks, he's dressed like that at 5 a.m., maybe 4 a.m. in LA. He's going to be doing his show. And we are early this morning because Ali has to have his call time of 9:45 a.m. Eastern time. And that's why we're early. And we are live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on digimentors.group, where you can see a lot more of the background information we put together for Ali. And that sizzle reel we'll also have there. Ali, thank you for being here. Everyone, tell us where you're watching from. Ask Ali questions. When he's on TV, he's asking questions.
Yep.
Today, we're turning the tables and talking to him. Why? Because of his great new book, Small Acts of Courage and a Legacy of Endurance and the Fight for Democracy. One of the things that you heard in that reel, what Ali was talking about, if America isn't free, then it's going to be very hard for anyone to be free. And thank you so much, Ali, for doing this. I'm going to read one of the wonderful testimonials, blurbs you have here from Jelani Cobb, a concise epic. This beautiful book is not simply a chronicle of Ali Velshi's Americanness, but of the long, winding path that led him to it. In a moment defined by polarities and recrimination, the story he tells here of heritage and community could not be more important. That's the dean of the Columbia Journalism School, as well as the great New Yorker writer, Jelani Cobb. Just so much praise for you. Tell us about the book, and we'll talk about so many different things. We'll read the paper together. We'll take lots of questions and comments coming in. We know that Team Velshi is watching. Lauren saying hi. Prednia watching from Silver Spring, Maryland. Nellie says, so excited for this conversation. Miriam says, so impressed, hadn't known Ali Velshi. And Dr. Tachi says, good morning from Fort Lauderdale. We are so grateful to everyone watching. Linda's watching from the New York Berkshires. So over to you, Ali.
Well, thank you, first of all, to all of you who are joining us this morning. And I've seen a couple of names from other time zones, including right here in California. Sri, I wrote this book. It's disguised as a memoir, but it is my outlook on the world and about politics. And part of it is to understand that my family's history, by the way, like many members of the Indian diaspora, started in the 1800s when they left India. There were several droughts in the 1800s, which caused a lot of people to have to leave because India's economy had been denuded under colonialism. India, at the beginning of colonialism or before British colonialism, was somewhere close to a quarter of global GDP and did nothing but suffer under colonialism. So by the time drought hit in the 1800s, and then there were more than a dozen of them, people couldn't do anything. They had to leave. So my family left. And when you were leaving India in those days, you left to where the boats went. You didn't have the same choices that Europeans did. So in the case of my family, they were in Gujarat, which meant they went to Bombay. And they got on a boat, and the boats went to Africa from there. So most of my family ended up in South Africa, and they were there for a new life. And I grew up thinking that they were business people. Right? My family's Gujarati. It's very typical to think about business people. What I didn't realize until researching it is they weren't business people. They were people who had push carts. They had literally wheelbarrows, and one would put dry goods in it and one would put vegetables in it, and they would go door to door and sell. And over the decades, those became little businesses to the extent that they had a shop and a few shops and a gas station, and they needed an accountant. So my great-grandfather got an accountant who was also Gujarati from India. And another of the accountant's clients was Mohandas Gandhi, who had come in 1893 to South Africa to fight a law case between two Indians. And Gandhi stayed on to fight apartheid. So these two men knew each other. Gandhi was in Johannesburg. My great-grandfather was in Pretoria. And Gandhi had to come to Pretoria to talk to the government when it was in the midst of negotiations. And my great-grandfather had a wagon and a horse, one of the few Indians who did. So he would give Gandhi the use of this horse and this wagon. It was called a dray. And that's how Gandhi would get around. He'd go and meet with the South African officials. Anyway, one day they're sitting around, and Gandhi feels that this fight to take down apartheid is weakening because people don't have resolve. The foot soldiers in the battle against apartheid do not have the resolve to actually do the things that have to be done to fight apartheid, which means breaking the law. So he said to my grandfather, "May I take your son," as he said to my great-grandfather, "may I take your son, who happened to be my grandfather, and take him to my school?" And my great-grandfather says, "But Gandhi, you're a Hindu and we're Muslims. That's not going to work very well." And Gandhi says, "I will learn the Quran and I will learn your religion to teach it to him," which he did. So my grandfather, at the age of 7, became Gandhi's youngest student at this ashram outside Johannesburg. And they had no hot water. They had 2 blankets. One you slept on. It was a concrete floor, a dirt floor. You slept on a blanket. You had one to cover yourself. And you were completely self-sustaining. And the point was to train these people to go to prison. And if you can live in that kind of environment, then when you break the law, the apartheid law, by going into, let's say, the train station through the wrong door, you get arrested, you go to court. The judge says 30 days or 5 pounds. They all take 30 days because when you grew up the way they grew up, 30 days in jail is just fine. And that's the beginning of my family's activism.
Amazing, amazing. I'm so glad you're able to tell us that story. I'm glad that people watching now know part of that. We want everyone to pick up this book. This is chapter 2 on Gandhi's shoulders, and you tell that story so beautifully here, but in the book it jumps out in a different way. So many little nuggets throughout the book, and what a legacy for your family to be associated with. There are some great chapter titles here I should just point out. Why does anyone leave here anymore? The yeast of our problems. A splinter up your ass. Murad Velshi could win. The people who get shit done. And this tells you that this is a book with a different vibe, a different style. And tell us about that chapter where people who get shit done.
So it's, it largely focuses on my sister. My grandfather did what he did in South Africa to fight apartheid. And there's a lot of detail about how that happened. But ultimately, the government got frustrated with my family and the business. It took them 75 years to build up a very, very prosperous business. It was a commercial bakery. I mean, to the size that it baked 4,000 loaves of bread an hour. And one day, the South African government came and demolished it. My grandfather died a week later. He was 58 years old, and he died fully believing that his dream of fighting apartheid had failed. Now, back then, when people were fighting for things, they weren't fighting for the whole enchilada. They wanted certain better rights than they enjoyed. My great-grandfather and my grandfather could never have imagined that my family would leave South Africa, ultimately end up in Kenya, where I was born, then end up in Canada, a full-fledged democracy, run for office, win, and get elected. And so my father did win and get elected. My sister went into the civil service. And she is the kind of person, the book is called Small Acts of Courage. She's the kind of person who thinks that people are not treated very fairly by society. They are treated unequally by society. And that frustrates her. And what she does with that frustration is she channels it into work on behalf of people. She's worked for constituents in a politician's office, an elected politician's office. She'd worked for the government as a civil service. And she's that kind of person who'll sit there and say, you seem to have a problem in this neighborhood. There's too many accidents at this intersection. And she'll get the study done and she'll figure out, how this place needs a traffic light, and she'll get that installed. And then there'll be a traffic light. And no one will ever know that this work has been done. And yet, in the end, society changes for the better. So my large argument in the book is that in a world in which it looks so overwhelming, there's so much going on. You've got Russia and Ukraine. You've got threats from China and North Korea. You've got Israel and Gaza. You can't sometimes move the needle on some of those, the largest of things, but you can always do something around you. And it's those people who improve society around them, themselves, and their families who end up generating or supporting change in society, which ends up changing the world. So the whole point is that small acts of courage, I call them courage because sometimes they cost you something. They get you out of your comfort zone. But small acts of courage can change the world.
They certainly can, and they are. And we want to remind people that this is part of a book tour. I mean, Ali is going to be on a book tour in many different cities. So we're going to show you that he's going to be launching this on this Tuesday in Philly. And then he's going to be in DC and in Baltimore and in New York on May 10th. I'm going to be seeing him in person. It's just so great that he's also going to be in San Francisco and LA. So some of them are ticketed events. A lot of them are open. Ali is always welcoming of folks. So please make sure you tell your friends that they can see him across the country. And of course, you can get in touch with his agent and invite him and pay him a lot of money to come to other places as well. He is not shy about accepting money.
I'll do it for free. I love talking to people.
for such a great cause, about talking about how we all can speak up and be sure to make a difference in the world. Let's look at some of the comments coming in. Stefan Kaplan is watching on his way to Newark Airport, on his way to Emory University, and looking forward to listening to Ali. And Stefan put together a nice little photograph the last time we were on stage together, and it was really fun to see that this week. Diane Stefani is watching, really excited about Ali. We'll always remember him reporting from Atlantic City in seawater up to his hips.
I'm still not warm from that night. It was. I just remember the date very well. It was October 29th. It was my birthday, and it was an unusually cold October. And we were sitting there in Atlantic City, and that water was just getting higher and higher and higher. And some producer got in my ear and says, "Get out of the water. It's dangerous." And it's like, it was dangerous. It was around my ankles. Now it's around my waist, and everybody's watching, and I'm staying in the water for a little while.
It's just like you would. By the way, my birthday's one day before that, because I remember
That's right.
hurricane as well. Of course, there was the reason you go, and people have asked you, I know I've asked you on the air before, why do you do that? Why do you feel like you need to be in the thick of things, in the thickest of things, whether it's a hurricane or whether it's Ukraine? And we were joking a little bit about the hurricane and all of that, and you being there. like this. This is something I tweeted when
That's
we
it.
were in Atlantic City.
That's Atlantic City.
Yep, that's from my tweet from back then. And here you are. So talk a little bit about that. And I'm sure your family is never happy when you're running in when everyone else is running out.
Yeah, and look, I'll separate hurricanes out because there is a robust and interesting discussion around how this is a uniquely American phenomenon, going out and covering hurricanes during the hurricane, right? A lot of people will tell you the hurricane's coming, this is where it's going to hit, everybody seek shelter, go inside, and then afterwards they'll come and tell you about the damage. So there's a good journalistic discussion about whether there's absolute value in going out in hurricanes. However, fundamentally, there are two responsibilities that journalists have. It doesn't matter what kind of journalist you are. Your responsibility is, number one, to bear witness. And I write about this in the book. The Charlie Sheen character, the Martin Sheen character in Gandhi, who bears witness to Gandhi and his supporters going to the Indian Ocean to make salt to prove their rights as Indians, and they get beaten, and then other volunteers come and help them. Generally, the women come and pull them back, their battered bodies back, and another line walks in, and the British soldiers, the police beat them again, and the guy who Martin Sheen is portraying is Webb Walker, a reporter in real life, who files these dispatches, which end up drawing attention to the struggle that is going on in colonial India. So the bearing witness is the reason you go. Whether you go to Ukraine or you go to Israel or you go to Gaza or you go to any of these things, you go so that when people, because there are gaslighters, now tell you that didn't happen or that's not how it's going, you can, as a reporter, say, no, I saw it with my own eyes. My crew was there. Here's our video. Here's our recordings of it. Here's my dispatch. Here's my work. So that's number one reason to go to places is because your viewers, your listeners, and your readers cannot. They're busy doing other things. So you bear witness. Then the number two responsibility of journalists is to hold power to account. But you cannot hold power to account without the gathering of the information that you use to hold power to account. So the same person doesn't have to do both. It's not that I have to go to Ukraine, then I hold someone to account about what I saw in Ukraine, but somebody has to do both parts of that job. As a reporter, you can be working entirely out of a desk in New York or anywhere else, but you do rely on information that was gathered by people who actually gathered it. And generally, or often, even in a world of AI and satellites and all that kind of stuff, in general, that means a reporter being present at an event, particularly now, right? During the college campuses, there are 96 different narratives as to what's going on. And in some cases, it's because lots of things and different things are going on. But without reporters going and seeing what's going on, the conversation can get away from you very quickly.
You're absolutely right. And I want to read that line from Martin Sheen in the movie where he says, whatever moral ascendancy the West once held was lost here today. India is free, for she has taken all that steel and cruelty can give, and she has neither cringed nor retreated. And this was years before India became actually independent.
Correct.
But
he said India is free, but he was making a point that what I watched today with my eyes, I am telling you, India has won its freedom.
Yes. Stefan reminds us that Ali is one of the finest journalists out there, always has such heart in his work. That's the photo that Stefan posted. It was great to be with you. This was, and we'll talk about your career, zigzagging in some ways. This was after you had one of your different moves, and this was in 2016. We'll come to that.
It's a great picture, Sri. It captures both you and me. It's a very genuine picture. That doesn't look posed at all. That just looks like two of us, as we often are at events, just enjoying each other's company.
Exactly. Calvin says, good morning from NewYorkShoutout.com. Chris Gorman says, good morning, Neil, Sri, and Ali, watching from New York, New York. And we have so many people watching, so many comments coming in. Lippy says, good morning from Manhattan. Hello from a fellow
another fellow Torontonian. Hi, Lippy.
Yeah. And I guess there's a hockey inside hockey line there, the damn Bruins.
We are Leafs fans, right? I mean, that's the thing about being from Toronto, despite the fact that, and look, that the team has ruined the joke in the last few years, but, Leafs had not seen a Stanley Cup, considering it's like the home of hockey in decades, but couldn't get a ticket to a Leafs game for all the trying you gave it.
And Dr. Lippy Roy has been multiple times on our show helping fight misinformation and disinformation, which we're going to get to in just a moment. Maya says, we love Ali. And Doug says, I wish more people understood democracy as well as Ali does. What a beautiful line. Here's a question from Calvin. Why are formal atrocity prevention studies employed in the academy and popular culture today as pragmatically created a popular narrative in 2024? Do you have a thought on that? Or if you can just talk a little bit about the academy and pop culture, what's happening there?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm understanding that question. So if you help me out with that, I will come back to it.
Here we go. Sudha says, Ali, I'm so glad to see you on our platform. I always watch you on MSNBC. Let's remind people where to find you, when to find you.
So it'll be 10 to noon Eastern on Saturdays and Sunday mornings, which is why you guys have been so accommodative to have me on just a little bit earlier this morning to chat with you. I'm usually on elsewhere too. I usually do Friday nights for Lawrence O'Donnell on The Last Word, and when any of my colleagues in primetime are off, I often ask to take their slot because it's another opportunity to have more conversation. So I'll usually be on a couple more times during each week, but Saturday and Sunday mornings from 10 to noon is my show, Velshi.
And everyone should be following you and look at the large number of followers you have. Pradnya says it's all about making our own corner of the universe a little better.
That's right. That's exactly the point of the book, right? That it's just if you do that, if you make your corner of the universe better, things are all right. You know Tim Snyder, right? The professor from Yale. He's on my show a lot, and we talk a great deal about the erosion of democracy and the growth of autocracy. And I said to Tim, God, it must have been 8 months ago. I said, Tim, you're a Yale professor, and I've got this TV show, and we sort of know what our role is in the preservation of democracy. But what about everybody watching us? What is their role? And he rhymed off a litany of things for about a minute that started with, do you have a library card? Do you go to your library? Do you support your library? Do you tell your librarians you support them? Do you go to your school board meetings? Do you go to are you involved in how books are selected at your local library or in your library? Do you support a candidate? I know you're voting because that's the price of admission if you're a democratic citizen. Are you helping somebody else register for to vote? Now, all that, there's a million things that happen before you can even run for office. And you can run for office like my dad did and lose. Actually, my dad did and my sister did. And realize that is a remarkable contribution to be able to put yourself up. Do you know how many people in southern states in the United States who are part of supermajorities in legislatures run unopposed? Unopposed. They are acclaimed to their position. In 2024 in America, can you believe that? What a remarkable democracy we've had, almost 250 years old. And there are some constituencies in which people run unopposed. So there's no reason for that, Sri. There's everybody should have an opponent in an election. You might be the best candidate and you should be elected for as many terms as that your voters will have you, but you should have debates and discussions about policy.
Yes.
So
preach it. This is like Sunday morning church.
Democracy allows us to do this, so we must do it. The big lesson of the book to me is that I grew up thinking citizenship was a series of rights because I grew up in privilege, right? My parents and my grandparents grew up under apartheid where they did not have rights by virtue of the color of their skin. I did not suffer any of that. I was born in Kenya, but it was post-colonial Kenya. It was a democracy. I moved to Canada where I grew up. It was a democracy. I didn't understand that citizenship came with responsibilities. But now as we see rights going away in America, it may not be your rights or my rights. Maybe reproductive rights don't affect you or me. But if my fellow Americans are not enjoying full rights, then I do not live in a complete democracy as of yet, which is fine. This is a work in progress. We are looking for a more perfect union. It means it's not perfect yet. It's fine. But it's on us to do that.
But we're so worried that after this year's election, it'll be much harder to be a democracy depending on how things go. Ron Thomas is a huge fan of yours. He's watching from Dubai, and he says, two of my favorite people. Oh, thank you so much. Such a fan of Ali Velshi. He's on target. And thank you, Ron.
From my old show, Ron was talking about the old show that I had on Al Jazeera, which was a fun place to work, which you are no longer going to be able to get, by the way, if you live in Israel. They just banned it overnight.
Yes, this gentleman was up at 3 a.m. Tweeting about that, and it's very sad to see anywhere where journalism is banned, any channel is banned. It's not good, and we're sorry to see that. Ron, I know you're so happy to have Ali here, talking to you, and folks. Post your questions, post your comments. This is a chance to talk back to Ali Velshi, to ask him a question. Please go in there and post your questions. Tell us where you're watching from. He'd love to hear and see where you are. Steve Ross is watching from Tokyo, and thanks for watching there. We're going to ask Neil to just come in for a moment to tell you, Ali, that one of the organizations that we work with at DigiMentors is the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they're working specifically on getting people to vote and to register. So, Neil, tell us about that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sri. Appreciate that. Our friends at the Southern Poverty Law Center actually just launched a campaign called The South's Got Now, really following up on what you're talking about, Ali, the importance of voter registration, voter education, and they're focusing on young people. The campaign is both in English and in Spanish, but they have very kind of basic information for people, helping them register to vote, educating people on the issues, getting people to make a plan to cast your ballot. So we just want to give people a quick overview. We'll share the links on social media, but wherever you are, whatever your age group, register to vote. I'll say, as an editorial comment, you don't have to say this, Ali. I'm sure Sri would agree. This is probably one of the most important elections of our lifetimes. Democracy is on the line. Register to vote. Get a friend to register. Make sure you go and vote. We need to hold the line. Period.
All right. Thank you.
I got no problem endorsing that. Just in the same way that we believe that hurricanes are harmful to people and we don't like homicide, we love democracy. And it is not a partisan comment to say at this point that there are people in America. Many of them are Republicans, by the way, but there's one party that is sort of standing up for democracy, and there's one political party that has been hijacked by a whole bunch of people who do not seem to be prioritizing the preservation of democracy. That's a very, very important matter. But this is an election in which Democrats and Republicans who continue to support democracy can come together and say democracy has to prevail after this election. Then we can have all the debates in the world that we want about minimum wage and healthcare and climate and all the important things that society needs to discuss. But right now, with only one healthy political party, you can't have healthy debates. And that's really, really bad for democracy.
And what an honor it is to work with a group doing this kind of work. Thank you, Ali. Appreciate it.
Everyone, please check out the Southern Poverty Law Center and the South's Got Now campaign. We are honored to work with them. Ron saying the show is always a masterclass, always, and now the teacher is in the house. So I love it when you have that passion, Ali, that you're able to display on TV that often the traditional American ideal of what an anchor should be, where you're just giving the facts. You're putting the facts in context, and that's what's so important. And that's why I said you're a little bit like when you're preaching to us. But talk about that and what kind of tension there has been in your career when you want to not just report everything is equal or give equal time to everybody, just because 97% of scientists say that climate change is caused by human acts, and 3% or even less say they're not, doesn't mean we have to give them both equal weight.
So it's 8:33 in the morning on a Sunday morning. So I will tell you, one of the abilities to do this show that I'm so proud of is that there's a team sitting in New York right now who are putting today's show together. They're checking all the facts, because there's going to be a lot of perspective in the show, but the perspective does not exist or should not be valued if it's not based on facts, right? We have a standards and a practices department. We've got people who look at our stuff. We've got viewers. We've got critics. We have people on social media who will tell you if you've gotten something wrong. So, number one, there's no point in lecturing anybody or convincing anyone of anything if you can't get it right. And I have a team right now in New York who's working very, very hard to make sure that 10 o'clock this morning, you're going to get 2 hours of the facts. And the facts are, in any given story, that there are different perspectives. You can validate other people's perspectives, but validating perspectives is not the same as treating everything as equal. Facts are facts. perspectives are perspectives, and there's an ability to be able to marry both. So right now we can say that there are people who Donald Trump is trying to convince to support him in his bid to get reelected. He's using a lot of misinformation and lying to get them to support him. Now, many of them are subject to that. They are validated by the fact that they, like many people across the political spectrum in America, are feeling frustrated by, you name it. It might be inflation. It might be this overwhelming sense of what's going on in the world. But what you're not entitled to do is lie to people. What I'm not entitled to do as a prospective host is lie to people. So we spend a lot of time on our show debunking incorrect facts. Now, I am very happy, as you know, Sri, to have people of different political persuasions on my show. I will often have people who do not share my views and do not share the prevailing views of my viewers. But generally speaking, my viewers are very, very tolerant of that, because if the person with whom I'm discussing or sometimes debating is doing so in good faith, they believe this to be true, they hold a different view, we should be open to listening to that. We should be open to debating it. I think there are a couple of reasons that someone is not going to be welcome on my show. One is we live in an age of gaslighting, and I'm not debating gaslighters. I'm not going to debate people who knowingly say things they know to be false in order to advance a political agenda. Number two, as Parag said, this is a fight for democracy, right? I have decided I don't like school shootings. I've decided I do not like the damage that hurricanes do. I've decided I do not like homicides. And I've decided I do not like people who actively work against democracy in this country, end of story, or any other country. I do not like the people who work against democracy in Hungary. I do not like the people who work against democracy in Turkey. I am saddened by the people who are working against democracy in our ancestral country of India. Right? These are democracies in which people are actually voting away some of their democratic rights. I do not like that. So I can take an opinion on the idea that if you are anti-democracy, I'm not giving you space to spread that, because our disagreements about climate, about wages, about unionization, about trade, whatever they are based on the fact that we have a democracy. It is a pluralistic democracy. We are not meant to agree with each other. I don't like using the word tolerance. We shouldn't tolerate each other. We should embrace the idea that different people with different views can exist in a democracy. But without the in a democracy part, none of the rest of it exists. So those are my bars. You can't lie to me. You've got to have an argument that's in good faith. And number two, you've got to be in favor of democracy. If you can meet those two bars, happy to have a debate with you on TV.
Thank you. And thanks for making that the line. Pradnya says democracy is on the line all over the world. Yes. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, a host of She's on Call, says Black Voters Matter does an amazing voter registration job and get out the vote.
Yep.
Patty says congrats on your book launch. That's coming up, folks. Just a reminder, that's happening this Tuesday in Philly, but he's also going to be in New York and in San Francisco. He's going to be in DC. So tell your friends to find out where he's going to be. He tweets that out. It's on his Twitter page and also on Facebook and elsewhere. Find out where he's going to be. Go support him. Go ask him questions. Buy the book and get it autographed. And make sure your friends read this and understand what he's talking about, that democracy is on the line, but you don't have to only run for office to make a difference. Small Acts of Courage is the name of the book. And by the way, his father was the first person of color from Asia and first Muslim to be elected to senior office in Canada. And that tells you that he didn't always win his races, but he got in the arena. And that's so important. And thank you for sharing that story. We have put in information, as Neil has, about voter registration at splcenter.org. Please check that out. And do what Pradnya is doing. She's tagging her friends on Facebook. Everyone who may not be awake at this time, but will want to watch this, we're live right now, but we'll be on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram at digimentors.group, are on all of those. As soon as we're off the air, people can rewatch this. And a special shout out to the people watching on Instagram. And so many great comments are coming in here. We just don't have enough time to get to those. Dr. Tachi, who's watching from Fort Lauderdale, says, very excited for the book. And Ron wants to know when you're coming to Dubai.
I'm going to get there. I'm going to be very close in a few weeks. I'm going to be in Doha. We'll be very within, like, it's a 30-minute flight or something, right? Can I say something about the Get Out the Vote stuff that we were just talking about? Southern Poverty Law Center and Black Voters Matter. I write a lot about Get Out the Vote in my book about my dad's campaigns. And, we were a bunch of immigrants running a campaign. So the campaign office looked a little different than perhaps they do in more sophisticated campaigns, because what immigrants do is their small acts is that when they bring food to a campaign office, right? So you'd walk in and you'd have all these international smells and stuff. And on election day, we had the Sikh community were the predominant cab drivers in Toronto. So they came and they lined up their taxi cabs in front of my dad's campaign office. And then someone would get a phone call that so-and-so needed to go vote. They would give the chit to the cab driver. The fare would never go on. Cab driver would go to that person's house, would get them to vote, but they'd make sure they've eaten. And if they hadn't eaten, because we were always overflowing with food at the campaign office, you'd come to the campaign office, you'd feed them, and then they'd go vote. So my view is that to preserve democracy and encourage people to vote, particularly amongst immigrant communities, which we were relying on, who didn't feel as fully included in the early 80s in the Canadian political system, we fed them. For the price of a meal, someone lived up to their democratic responsibility of voting. And now we have laws in America where you can't give people a glass of water, you can't give them comfort while they're standing in a line for 2, 4, 6, 12 hours. What's wrong with that? I mean, Sri, why are we in a world in which we are not saying, what difference does it make if I feed you and give you drink while you stand in a line to participate in democracy so that we can achieve the goal of 100% of people voting? I heard a legislator in the West saying something like, it's gotten to the point that it's so easy that college students can just roll out of bed and cast a ballot. And this person was complaining. They were trying to prevent that from happening. And I was thinking, that's amazing that a college student can roll out of bed and vote, do their civic duty. We're thinking about this the wrong way. Give people every incentive. I'm kind of in favor of giving them money to vote. I understand that sounds a little weird, not to vote for someone in particular, but give people incentives to vote. I mean, there shouldn't be more incentive than democracy, but don't disincentivize.
Yeah.
Don't pull people away from and by the way, everything disincentivizes you. If you have to wait in a 2-3 hour line, either in the heat or in the cold, that's a disincentive. Make it easy for people to vote. You will end up having a better society.
Yes, please make sure it's easier for people to vote. Everything we can do about that really matters. And by the way, a lot of people understood that there is a problem with this. Even giving a voter in line for 4 or 5 hours a bottle of water is illegal. They found that out, as you might know, from Curb Your Enthusiasm, because that was
a remarkable episode. Yes.
And the fact that it took a comedian and a kind of, show that's not at all serious about anything to highlight this. A lot of people had no idea. Twitter was fire with this. What is this?
It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yes, it is. So many more comments coming in. If you're joining us,
a full belly makes good poll choices. I like that. I feel like a full belly makes good choices in life.
By the way, I'm just back from India where the elections are going on. And of course, you overeat when you go home, as you know. Folks, speaking of food, in the New York Times today is an entire cooking section. And the PDF you can find online. And here you have a choice for dinner. It says, do you want to be elaborate or do you want to be effortless if you're holding a dinner party? So that's the cooking section.
I'll take effortless. That one was an easy choice for me. It's a fantastic insert, but I'm looking at it thinking, wait, why? There's a choice here? I could do effortless and it looks pretty good. I'm taking effortless.
Sri, if you get a chance, open it up. This thing is huge.
It's beautiful.
It is a big, it's a gatefold Pano 8.
Yeah.
You really, I mean, it's incredible.
The right is I think put some effort in, and the left side is the effortless.
Right.
Exactly. And so
we have a gift link. We have a gift link on our website and the PDF of the whole thing that you can download. Thanks to our friends at the Times, Wayne Camadoy in particular. I know Wayne is watching and very interested in this show. So thank you, Wayne, for all of your support.
So go to digimentors.group, look for the New York Times read along button, and in Ali's show, you will see a free PDF that you can download and a gift link. So if you don't subscribe to the paper, get this. But I know Ali will agree with me that subscribe to a paper, any paper, anywhere in the world to support journalism.
The point that Tim Snyder made to me in that list of things he was saying, support your local media. Support your local media, because if you didn't care that much, and then the 2016 election happened, and you saw how important print media became to the accountability, the bearing of witness and accountability that we need. So think about that generally. First of all, the great newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post, but then think about local news. Think about the accountability of a reporter walking into a city council meeting and those city councilors understanding that, okay, Velshi's in the room, so we can't pull off nonsense. Think about George Santos. The information about George Santos was known, but there was no infrastructure in local news to put a reporter on it for 2 or 3 or 4 days, because had they been able to do that, that story would have been out there. But we don't, because we've denuded local news. There aren't enough reporters. Reporters do these hits on TV on a rotating basis, so they can't take time out to read stories and to do what my staff is doing literally right now, going through stories to be able to get to the bottom of it and get more information and pre-interview people and get the right guests. This is not free. It should be free. I come from a world where public media is a very big deal. It's not free, by the way. Your tax dollars pay for it. I'm a big believer in this, but in the moment, if you'd like to do a small thing to help preserve democracy, support newspapers and support your local news in particular. Some of these subscription things that you can get where people are doing great work on podcasts or local news or young journalists in New York, places like the City, where it's real. In Philadelphia, I'm on the board of the Philadelphia Citizen, groups that are doing real accountability journalism. The 19th, which is doing accountability journalism that focuses on women, the 19th Amendment, the right for women to vote. But these things that tell you about segments of society that are not being properly represented or being treated fairly help us all, because until we fix democracy for everybody, we're not there for all of us. And so please do support local journalism.
Thank you. That we should clip that and be sent out. All local organizations should send that out. Apollo says American politics is all about the argument. We have controlled revolutions every 2 years, but we have on one side of the debate people who are not acting with honest intention, contention. That's something the founding fathers didn't seem to anticipate. We thought there'd be good faith actors on both sides, and fringes will always be problematic. But there would be people who understand that there are ways in which we should be acting, what we owe everybody, and that's part of the problem that we can't seem to identify. Folks, if you're just joining us, this is Ali Velshi. I'm Sri Srinivasan. This is the Sunday New York Times Read Along. Usually 8:30 Eastern Time. We read the Sunday New York Times, which we're about to do with Ali. And he's a chief correspondent at MSNBC and is the author of a brand new book, Small Acts of Courage, A Legacy of Endurance in the Fight for Democracy. Please tell your friends to join us now or later. Just tag them, forward this, put this on WhatsApp. Everyone should watch this. Everyone should buy his book and know that the fight that we're all in for democracy really, really matters. Let's see some comments that are coming in. Dory says, I love your read-alongs. Great to hear you and Ali Velshi. Good morning. And the Philadelphia Inquirer is my local journalistic jam. Local journalism matters. Thank you so much.
And a good example, by the way, of a newspaper like many, like in Detroit, for instance, that had very serious financial issues and was taken over by largely a trust, business interests. That it's a nonprofit now. The Philadelphia Inquirer, for all intents and purposes. Can you imagine? Detroit lost its daily newspaper. Philadelphia, for all intents and purposes, had two, and almost went to zero. So there are people, and some of them are people with a lot of money, and I really applaud them. And there's certainly all sorts of questions about corporate control of media, and they're valid questions. But I do applaud those people of wealth who have gone into communities and said, till there's a better solution, I will buy the newspaper and run it as a nonprofit, so that Philadelphia has a daily newspaper.
Excellent. Dory says, I'm involved with Glenn Kirshner's Justice Matters. Pradnya Haldipur says, has Ali seen Girls on the Bus, a slightly dramatic take on journalistic coverage on the road to the White House by 4 women reporters? Wayne Camadoy from the design desk of the New York Times says, thanks for sharing. Plenty of great stuff in the paper, 7 days a week. Effortless equals delicious. I think we're all on the same page there. Thank
you, Wayne, for the work you do, because I'm a big reader and enjoyer of the New York Times.
Emmy says, thank heavens for the North Shore Leader, a small Long Island paper shining a light on George Santos first. Really, really important. Donato says, totally agree with Ali that it's worthwhile to pay for new subscriptions to support democracy. Happy to support responsible journalism, but not fake news. So everyone, please support. We're not saying subscribe to the big papers. We're saying subscribe to a paper. You know, Ali, when I was at the Met Museum working as chief digital officer, people would ask me about, you know, how come you talk about other museums? Why do you only, you know, why don't you only talk about the Met? And I would say our competition isn't another museum. It's Netflix. It's Candy Crush. You know, it's all of these other things that occupy people's life in 2024. So we're not competing with each other. Just go to any museum. I'd be happy if you went to a museum. Of course, super happy if you went when I was there. Lots of great comments coming in, folks. We're talking about Ali Velshi's book. He's on book tour starting Tuesday in Philadelphia and going across the country. Please contact him, contact his team. We want you to be able to interact with him. And thank you for being a diplomatic frontliner. I think sometimes you're diplomatic, sometimes you irritate people in a good way, Ali.
I can introduce you to lots of people who I irritate on a regular basis. But yeah, look, I think, you know, what I want to stay back from, Sri, in my career is I don't ever want anybody describing me as a provocateur. Not that I don't have a lot of respect for provocateurs. There are some people who do that, but that's not generally me. I'm not generally the type of person who would do well with a live radio show, because some of these people are able to form opinions on things very, very quickly and have really strident opinions and talk for 2 or 3 hours about them. I'm not really that guy. I tend to have to read a lot of stuff before I form an opinion. But I am prepared, once I have done that, and once my team has helped with the research, to go into something with a strong view. And absolutely, sometimes my viewers and people who are very kind to me and who are very regular viewers of us will comment on social media that they didn't agree with my take on something. And I'm okay with that. I love that. I love the criticism. Generally, I certainly like it when it's meant to be constructive. Social media sometimes invites us not to be the most constructive in our criticism, and when somebody does that, I offer to send them to AA or AAA batteries for their remote so that they can change the channel and not watch me. But I you know, I have the trust of my viewers, so I will lean into that a little bit and say, come with me on this journey a little bit. You might not fully agree with me, but hopefully you'll understand where I'm coming from, and you'll understand the long homework that I've done to support the fact that I've presented you with this. And I'm always happy to have the counter argument on. I'll often book people who will tell me didn't believe the argument you made or didn't really like it, and I'll have them come on. I probably should do more of that. So it's like a museum. If you generally trust the curator, you'll go back to the museum, even if you don't like 100% of the exhibits equally well. But you say, I think this person's got the right idea, so I'll keep going. And that's generally what our viewers do for us.
Dory says, she's put a link to a recent video where Robert De Niro was the host, and it had 330,000 plus views. So many people care about saving our democracy. Yes. That's really important. Monica is watching from Virginia. Hi, Monica. And Naomi says, Buffalo's muckraking investigative post shines a light on the city's corruption. More like this is needed. Yes. We need this everywhere, and that's so important. Before we get to the paper, let's talk a little bit more about your career. You know, at one of our things on stage, you said you were Donald Trump's nightmare, not just because of your journalism, but because you were actually born in Kenya. You're an immigrant.
I'm the Kenyan-born Muslim that he always complained about. And you know, the guy he said was a Kenyan-born Muslim, Barack Obama, was not at any of the meetings. I mean, you'd know, right? Obama, if there was a meeting of Kenyan-born Muslims and Obama was one, he'd come to the meetings, and he was never, because he'd get all the attention. So, yes. I like to point out, if you're very troubled by Kenyan-born Muslims, I'm actually one of them. But the funny thing is, when I used to say that back then, it was never really funny. It was always it's a whole thing that's tinged with racism. But it was a sort of a Donald Trump, sort of a weird guy, and says unusual things. Imagine what this has morphed into, Sri. This has become a campaign that largely leads on a daily basis with racism largely directed at immigrants, which, separate from the fact that I'm an immigrant and we share an immigrant background and an ancestry, just economically unsound. Right? America is a country in which immigration falls under the Department of Homeland Security. That's just a flawed framing for immigration. It's not that security is not a valid concern with respect to immigration, and the southern border is not a valid concern, and you should have a door and you should be able to open it and close it as you need. But to think of immigration as a security matter, as opposed to an economic matter, as opposed to a population matter, as opposed to a workforce matter, is just wrong. And most successful countries when it comes to immigration, and Canada and New Zealand and Australia all have a greater proportion of their population who are immigrants than America does. Most of these people understand that immigration is an economic imperative. It is neither charity, nor is it bad for your economy. And so what I didn't realize back then is it was all part of a much larger scheme that is just, America has done very well by not subscribing to immigration nonsense. For all of its history, there's been prejudice against immigrants, Jewish immigrants, Italian immigrants, every wave of Irish immigrants, every wave of immigration has faced this nonsense. So it's not new. It was wrong then, and it's still wrong now.
Neil's saying that we had a great show with Jim Heaney from the Investigative Post last fall. You can watch that show in the link he's sending out. And let's do a shout out to Ottawa. We talk a lot about Toronto. Here is Eric watching from Ottawa.
I lived in Ottawa for a while. I love Ottawa.
For those who don't understand the American system and the Canadian system, talk a little bit about the role of Ottawa and how it's different from Washington, D.C.
Well, here's how it's the same. It's on a river that is the boundary between Ontario and Quebec, because it was a compromise solution, just like Washington, D.C. was a compromise solution between the North and the South, literally. Ottawa is also a literal compromise solution between what was then, there were two parts of Canada. There was French Canada represented by Quebec and English Canada represented by Ontario, Upper and Lower Canada. But Ottawa is home to the federal parliament of Canada. It's a parliamentary system. Over the years, beginning to think that while I love the experiment that is America, days like this, a parliamentary system might be better, because you do enjoy, generally speaking, parliamentary systems a little more in terms of variance, in terms of political parties. The entire spectrum in Canada from left to right tends to live very close to what you would consider the middle of the American spectrum. It probably leans a little to the left, but it's, a lot of people think Canada is very liberal because of some of its policies, including better policies on abortion, much longer standing policies on gay marriage and things like that. But in fact, Sri, I would argue that Canada is more libertarian than just being liberal. It's a country that believes that there is a limited role for government, but it does believe that one of those roles is the provision of healthcare. So Canada is like every other developed country in the world, Canada is a universal healthcare country, and that's one of the biggest distinctions between our two nations.
Sri, before we get to the paper, I just want to give a couple of shout outs from Instagram, and we're getting some comments there. We need to read them manually. So Walter Grayson is a professor in Minnesota, McAllister, great friend of ours. He's looking forward to seeing you in Minnesota at some point. Hopefully you can make it up there.
I get to Minnesota a lot, so I'm quite sure we'll have an event in Minnesota. Thank you.
Great. And then Melissa Klontz is saying, so excited to see two leaders in the media evangelizing about local media. Certainly an important topic. And a number of other people are watching. Again, we're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. If you missed the beginning of the show, if you joined us late, as soon as we're done, you'll be able to watch the show from its entirety on those same channels from the beginning. You will want to do this. Trust me. You will want to watch the entire show. We brought Ali on at 5 minutes after the hour, probably the quickest we've ever brought anyone on, and it's been absolutely worth it.
Yeah, and he's getting ready before his show, which is
right.
So nice that he would be on the show with us before his show. That's really, really kind.
I'm going to be very warmed up. My executive producer, I'm sure, is watching this right now. Her name's Rebecca, and she's thinking to herself, this is a bad idea, man. Normally he rolls in on a Sunday morning a little bit sleepy, and I can at least get him to do stuff. Now I'm going to be like hot. I'm going to hit my show, and my viewers are going to be, what's going on? Have you had like 9 cups of coffee? Why are you so amped up at 10 o'clock in the morning?
And it's not even 10 because you're actually in California, and we have people watching from around the world.
Hey, you can see the sun's just starting to rise here.
I can see that. Yeah, we were worried it was just a black screen, but of course now there's some color. Doug Levy has jokes. Ottawa is a much better place to ice skate than DC.
Oh, and you know, people ice skate to work in Ottawa. It's the canal. So it's fantastic. You live along the canal and you're going to downtown Ottawa, and thousands of people in the morning in winter are skating to work. That's the commute to work in Ottawa. It's one of the most amazing things about that city.
All right, let's talk about the news, and we have about 30 minutes left with Ali. Please post your questions and comments. We're going to read the newspaper with him. This is the New York Times Read Along. Tag a friend. Please share this on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, any place where your friends are watching. Tag them. They can join us now or later. And Ali will just jump in as he sees anything he'd like to comment on. He will not be shy. Russia wrestles with recruiting women for war. Pardon for inmates. This is because Russia is trying to be much more conservative. So for them to recruit women is more difficult because that's against their conservative principles, if you can call them that. Campuses
they're out of people. They're out of people.
Yes.
I mean, it's a real problem because this was the biggest army in Europe, if you don't count the NATO armies, that was supposed to apparently win this war in 3 days. Then they came and they got the convicts out. So some of the more trained people went to the Wagner group, which, as you know, they had problems with. And then they were bringing these convicts out. And Putin's view was, whatever, you know what, we'll clean the prisons. He thought the convicts were the dregs of society. So these people go out. They were not the most committed soldiers because who wants to die in a war? And they're just running short of people, and this war's not over. So Russia's got a very serious problem with this.
Yes. By the way, they're still talking about Ottawa, and Lily is moving to Ottawa. She's settled on this, and she's going to move to Ottawa.
I think a lot of Americans are going to be thinking about places in Canada, perhaps, depending on what happens in the election.
Yeah, but to be fair, everybody said that after other elections, and they didn't really move. It's sort of like journalists who said they're going to leave Twitter. Not everybody did. A lot of people did, but not
including me. I mean, I've slowed it down a lot, but I didn't actually leave.
Carol says hello from Tampa Bay. And we'll get back to this question, Dr. Tachi. We've not forgotten. I'd love to know your thoughts about the effects of AI and what will happen to journalism, especially with deepfakes. So we'll come back to that, especially in this election year. Campuses give history lesson about activism, decades of takeovers, tents and tensions. And look what happened yesterday at the University of Michigan in the Big House. Disruption at Michigan's graduation, pro-Palestinian demonstrators on Saturday's ceremony at Ann Arbor. Other universities are bracing for disturbances. Not everyone around the world may realize this is graduation and commencement season here. We've told people we'll talk about disinformation a little bit. As you know, sometimes with disinformation, a nugget of a problem or an issue then gets multiplied 1,000-fold. And that's what's happening with the vaccine issue. Sure, as with any vaccine, some people are harmed. But in this case, it's so small. But now you can see it on the front page of the New York Times, what this will do to people like RFK Jr. to say, look, this means all vaccines are bad, that the 270 million Americans who got vaccinated were wrong, and that'll create more panic. Your thoughts?
Look, back before we had all the misinformation we've had about everything, the largest source of misinformation was healthcare misinformation, right? The top 10 websites, if you look up any particular ailment, the top 10 websites used to just be nonsense. So still, you have to be very, very careful if you're going to consult Dr. Google. Back before healthcare information was the main source of misinformation on the internet, it was specifically vaccinations. Because of this, because there are adverse effects, particularly traditionally, when vaccinations were generally live viruses. There were adverse effects to many, many types of vaccinations. And by the way, when you get one, if you get smallpox or typhoid or something, you get the vaccination, it hurts for a couple of days. That's because you've put a foreign body into your body, and your body's reacting to it. You get a fever, you're sore. So it was always an easy way to do things, to tell people some people will have more serious reactions. And anybody who has read the science on every vaccine will understand exactly what is written here, that's going to be the outcome. A small percentage of people will have adverse reactions. And by the way, you don't want that to be your child or you, but percentage-wise, you will keep most of society healthy, and as a result, fewer people will have adverse reactions and will die. That's the statistics of vaccination. That's the statistics of medication in general. We became Luddites for some reason around this, but it started with people like, people of RFK's ilk who have gone around and just spread this kind of misinformation. It's just statistics. Anybody who takes anything, including aspirin, you should read the statistics and say, what are the chances of an adverse reaction? So I think that's important for people to read.
Now, my math isn't good, but out of 270 million people who got 677 million doses, 13,000 adverse effects, and this can be from very serious to mild, have been reported. Yes. And only 19% have been reviewed so far, and only 47 of those were deemed eligible for compensation, and the compensation was $3,600 on average. So right. We're not talking about this being a major crisis. Yes, if it is your child, if it is you who gets something from this, and it could also be a coincidence, but if you get it from this, then it's a tragedy of the highest order. But in conflating this and making this so bad, what Bobby Jr. and others have done is we're now seeing the return of measles, the return of other diseases that were eradicated, yes, that are now coming back only because of misinformation.
Right. And look, I think 100% of people, I think we really have to understand what rights are. We don't mandate that people get vaccinated. We mandate that people get vaccinated if they're interacting with other people. Students get vaccinated if they're interacting with other students, which they generally have to do to go to school. People who needed COVID vaccinations would need to vaccinate in order to come to work, or in some cases, special accommodations could be made. 100% of people who take something into their body should be able to read about it and should be able to make personal decisions. What you don't get to make a personal decision about is whether you can willingly carry a virus around that can injure or kill other people. We have immunocompromised people in our society. We have elderly people in our society. So the issue is you should have rights about what you put in your body. You should have rights about what injections you take. What you don't have rights about is endangering other people in society. So again, read the statistics, read up all that kind of stuff, and make your own decisions about what you're prepared to do. But if you have to live in the world with other people, in the same way that you can't go outside your house and punch someone in the nose and injure them, you cannot willingly spread a virus to them either.
Stefan Kaplan says the shingles vaccine is a tough one, but better that than getting it. And everybody over 50 should go get it. I got it. It is very painful, and I would report that perhaps as adverse effect. But
damn, so is shingles.
Yeah, exactly. Here is a former guest on the show, John Branch, the wonderful sports writer at the New York Times, when art, music, and writing could garner Olympic glory. So you're part of the NBC family. Are you going to be in Paris?
No. Part of the fun about being the chief correspondent at MSNBC is that I get all the bad stuff. I don't tend to get. I used to do fun, interesting things like events and horse races and stuff like that. That doesn't happen anymore. I'm on call for all the bad things that happen in the world.
One nostril edges out another and another. This was a close call yesterday, speaking of NBC, at Churchill Downs. And by the way, very important reporting just this week about the problems in horse racing and the tragedies that happen. And look at this story about broods emerging two at once. Illinois prepares to hear the loudest roar. And if you haven't experienced this yourself, it is something else, isn't it?
I was, for the last big round of cicadas, I lived in Atlanta. I never heard anything like I thought the world was coming to an end. It was something. And this one is apparently going to be substantially louder and bigger. So look, once you get used to it and you understand what it is, it's one thing. It is kind of amazing because the dead cicadas are all over the ground all the time. And it definitely looks like something biblical. But yeah, be ready for it. Earplugs.
Okay. Here are some shows people are talking about. Do you have time to watch Netflix or any of the? streaming channels?
I'm usually 3 seasons behind on almost everything I watch.
Okay. Here's what they're saying is
I hear
leaving
about
Netflix in America. What's leaving Netflix in America? The Box Trolls, The Great Gatsby, The Mick, and Split. But I know a show everyone's talking about. It's called Baby Reindeer. I had not heard of it, but I've not seen it. I don't know what it's about, but lots of people saying they love that show. By the way, here's a quote from that story about cicadas. They don't bite, they don't sting, they're not poisonous or venomous. They're just these sweet little guys who hang out and suck tree sap.
What a sweet way to look at things. How pluralistic, right? That's the pluralism that I'm talking about that we need more of in America. It's just, they're just doing their thing.
Homemade drones, a key weapon of Myanmar rebels. You know how much we talk about drones in so many different stories. Any reflections on, even in your coverage, you as a news organization use drones, so talk about that.
Yeah, it is probably one of the biggest developments, including in the storytelling, right? When we were discussing Ukraine and showing some of the things that happened in the damage, our ability to have drones. I mean, the old days in the news, if you needed a high shot of something, some reporter or photographer or cameraman needed to go on top of a building, but you could only get that high if it was a demonstration. And by the way, there are security issues with getting on top of buildings. So then you'd need helicopters. So with the student protests we've been seeing across the country, you see a lot of local news organizations still relying on helicopters. Drones are game changing. I mean, a helicopter is a several $100,000 machine that requires a pilot to do that. The ability to cover news and to see things that are happening, both news events, climate events, and wars with drones, that's the amazing part of it. The dangerous part of it is drones are now used as weaponry. And very, very effective weaponry. They're too small to shoot down in many cases. One of the things we saw both with the Iranian attack on Israel, and we've seen many, many times in Ukraine, is that we've got both countries have some sophisticated weaponry that can intercept missiles, right? And in Iran, in Ukraine, they're using our Patriot missiles, American-made Patriot missiles. In Israel, you've got a series of missile defense systems. We most notably know it as Iron Dome. Well, these are expensive missiles that go up. A drone, which can fly in, an Iranian drone, Iranian-built drone that goes to Ukraine, as low as a few $1,000s. So they send, let's say, 50 of them up there. You're going to launch 50 Patriot missiles that are millions of dollars each to intercept them. So it's a remarkable tool of war. Like so many things, including AI, which we're going to discuss, there are some remarkable positive things about the advent of drones and some remarkably dangerous things.
Thank you. Here's an ad for Montefiore Einstein, the hospital system, and it says, "In honor of all nurses for whom care is a calling." I think we don't celebrate nurses enough. We did during the pandemic, but let's give them a shout out. Here is a shout out to Louisville, Bourbon Country, talking about ads here. Israel, Gaza, and the law on starvation as a weapon of war. And I know you've been covering all of this, and you've been also covering the protests across the country.
We will do so again today.
Yeah. By the way, who's on your show? Can you give us a little preview?
We got a lot of folks on the show today, including on this particular topic of the of both Israel and Gaza and the protests. I've got Peter Beinart and Nick Kristof. Nick Kristof wrote something for the New York Times, which I found very provocative and interesting. He has been fairly critical of the way the war has been carried out and the role that America has played in it. But he asks the question about whether the way in which some of these protests have unfolded is helpful or hurtful to the underlying cause. What tends to happen in protests is they become their own beast, right? It starts to become, the conversation becomes about the protest, about the protesters and the police, about the protesters and the counter-protesters, all of which is valid, except that many of these people are in fact protesting about the war itself, about Israel's conduct, about America's conduct, and about the starvation and the death of Palestinians. Do the two things connect properly? Do they lead? Do these protests that people are very, very passionate about lead to an outcome that people would like? And he makes some interesting arguments that others have made to say, sometimes they lead to the opposite outcome. Sometimes you end up with this sort of law and order society where people say, I'm going to clamp down. I want the person who's going to come into office who's going to clamp down on what's going on. So I think it's just an interesting discussion. And Nick, as you know, is a very thoughtful commentator. Nick is also one of those guys like Webb Walker, who I write about in the book. Nick goes to these places. He bears. He's not just a commentator who sits and writes op-eds. He has been to some of the worst places in the world and spoken to the very people who are victims of some of the greatest catastrophes in the world. So I'm looking forward to, among many discussions that we're going to have, I'm looking forward to that one.
10 a.m. Saturdays and Sunday, Velshi on MSNBC. And please give Nick our best. We've spent some great times with him. Want to show you this remarkable two pages in the Times, and then we want to start wrapping up because we have you only for another few minutes. This is the Britain's leader being of Indian origin is something our parents, grandparents could never have imagined. And Winston Churchill could never have imagined, the racist that he was, could never imagine this. He's seemingly out of touch, may soon be out of office. If he loses, he deserves it for a lot of his very arch conservative views and what he's doing with sending refugees to Rwanda. We don't have to get into any of that. But the fact that that's a reality of today, and that a man named Sadiq Khan has been reelected for a third term as mayor of London. Reflect on that for a moment, and then we'll just point out that Canada's Sikh killing arrests highlight India spy agencies' alleged gang ties. Again, we don't have time to get into all of this, but the role that Sikhs and minorities now play in Canada. One of the opposition leaders is a Sikh gentleman. So talk about all of this if you can in 30 seconds.
It's amazing, right? The three things having to do with the Indian diaspora are on 2 pages of the New York Times. Rishi
and
Sunak,
Pakistan, just to point out, Sadiq Khan is of Pakistan origin.
That's right. The Rishi Sunak and the UK Conservative Party has been a party that's been in disarray for some time. So on one hand, as somebody who is another member of the Indian diaspora, there's a lot of pride in seeing people succeed to those positions. But the UK Labour Party, UK Conservative Party is going to need a bit of an overhaul. They've been on the wrong side of a lot of policies since Brexit, and it's all driven by a very warped sense of immigration that we're, by the way, starting to adopt here in the United States. Literally, anti-immigrant sentiment has led to the decline of the UK Conservative Party, that's led to the decline of where the UK is. So they need to put why all these brown and black immigrants ended up in the UK? Because they colonized all those countries. If you didn't want them there in the first place, maybe you shouldn't have been there in the first place. The Nigerians, the Pakistanis, the Indians, all those people who ended up knocking on your door to come into the UK, who, by the way, in many cases are successful politicians, it's because the UK colonized them all. Let's go to the story. Of course, the mayor of London again being reelected. So that's interesting, and it speaks a little bit to the resurgence of the labor movement in the Labour Party, not the labor movement, but the Labour Party, which has also gone through a very, very hard time in the UK in recent years, and we'll see whether that develops. The Sikh issue in Canada. So there's 2 things. One is the Sikhs in Canada have been there for a very long time. They predate most Indian immigration into Canada, and by the way, in some cases to the United States, because they came over very much like the Chinese and Japanese did to build railways. They came to Western Canada and the Western United States. Remarkable discrimination against them from those days. I have a chapter in my book in which I write about the anti-Sikh discrimination in Canada. When the first Sikh gentleman decided he wanted to become a Royal Canadian Mounted Police, a Mountie, but he needed to wear his turban, not a hat. And that was like a Supreme Court case in Canada. But the idea that the Canadian government has now come out and said that they hold the Indian government responsible for this is causing remarkable diplomatic rifts between India and Canada, and the United States is involved in this too. So that's an interesting story to follow, because anything to do with India is an important story to follow, because it is the world's largest democracy, and I'm touching a lot of wood to make sure it stays that way.
Thank you. Ron says, Ali V, thanks for a great show. I was rushing someone on a Zoom call to get off so that I could listen in. Thanks for sharing a master class in learning. And Mary C. Curtis, so enjoying this conversation with my dream team from Charlotte, North Carolina. Love your show, Ali. And Ali, if you haven't met Mary. She's an incredible commentator, columnist, political expert. You should have her on our show.
We are going to meet, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to very quickly just show people a little bit of the paper. What we're going to do, Ali, we're making a decision here because we want to get maximum time with you. We'll read the rest of the paper after you're off to your show so that we can talk to you a little bit more about the book and other questions. So let's get to that question about artificial intelligence. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the simplest way to put this is, to the degree that artificial intelligence can do things that we really need substantially faster than humans can. And I'm talking about computational stuff that is required in the finding of solutions around climate, around healthcare, things like that. I'm all about, let's employ it to run the algorithms and the codes that we need to find the cure to the handful of cancers that we don't have cures to, find cures to, important things. Figure out, I definitely need AI in my GPS, right? I want that. It's not a person who's going to help me. I'm not calling my mother to ask whether I should make a left turn here or not. I want all the AI to be deployed to things like that. I do not know that I want AI to be doing things that the human condition improves on, which is the arts and literature and writing, creative activities, empathetic activities, solutions to things like wars and conflict in the world. And I think what happened, and we saw this here in LA with the writers' strike last year, we saw where the confluence of those two things start to happen. So we don't want to be Luddites and say that AI is not good, because that would be saying like the combustion engine is not good, although it turns out that was bad for the environment. We want to be able to engage AI where it will help us live longer, healthier, more prosperous, and safer lives. We want to avoid AI where it is simply going to replace workers at a lower cost for no potential benefit to humanity. Now, again, arts are and I'm really pleased about the folks who went on strike and reminded us that, yeah, you can write movies using AI, you can write TV using AI, but that what we want to do is use AI for the things that we can't otherwise solve easily in society, not for the things that we solve just fine, but we actually have to pay people for.
Yes, this idea that getting rid of workers is overall a good thing drives American capitalism, and it's horrible, and it's just not right. Folks, we have just a couple of minutes left with Ali Velshi. And Ali, I made an executive decision without talking to my executive producer about what we're going to do with the show, because we want to fit you in. What happens in those conflicts with your EP when you make a call on the air?
She's the boss. But she's really good about it because she's a mother of two young children. So, she knows how to handle people like me. She'll often tell me if I'm going too long in an interview, she'll in a lovely voice, she'll say, okay, well, if you go another minute here, we're going to be canceling this, or this is going to happen. So she's sort of telling me the way you might tell a small child, these are the consequences. If you continue to do this, then you're going to have to give that up. But she's the boss. She runs an amazing, amazing team. And that's why I can be on with you so close to airtime, because the show is in fantastic hands. I've got a great team and a great boss in New York getting the show ready.
Thank you. And thank you to Rebecca and the entire team for letting Ali do this before he goes on your show. Nobody else would be able to handle that. And Rebecca will talk separately about who's harder to handle, Ali or your two young children.
I think your executive producer should be talking to Rebecca. Yeah.
Yes. All good, says Neil. Folks, just a couple of minutes left. Talk a little bit about your banned book club.
Oh, it must be one of the finest things we do every week. We focus on an author. We focus on some contemporary authors, because most banned books are contemporary authors writing about things that are less common to some people. Their experiences growing up queer, or sexual assault, or racism, or books that offer what seem to some people to be alternative versions of American history. In fact, it was the 1619 Project and Nicole Hannah-Jones that gave us the impetus to do this, and she was one of our first guests. So there's that kind of book. But there are all sorts of books that are banned with authors who have come long before us, like Shakespeare has stuff that's banned. So we talk to experts about those books and why they're banned. For instance, in Florida, you can't read in many schools complete Shakespeare works. You can only read certain passages in context because they're worried that children will learn, if they read about Shakespeare, I don't know, about sex or suicidal ideations or whatever the case is. Look, there are a lot of reasons why parents should be involved and or concerned about what their kids read. Parents should be involved to the extent that is possible. But the way to get involved with that is to be in discussion with your teachers, with your school board, with your librarians, not to have the state decide on what your children are going to read. It is a very slippery slope because people don't identify the school or the library with the state. But even librarians tell me, public librarians say, we are the state. You don't want to give me these choices. Do not hand these choices over to you. We have teachers and we have librarians who are experts. I mean, anybody who can figure out the Dewey Decimal System, you should be able to trust with your life. But these are people who can tell you, Sri, your kids are interested in this kind of stuff. We've got a lot of other suggestions to them. And to the extent that there are things written about experiences that children have in school that are unsavory, that involve abuse, that involve sexual assault, that involve questions about identity. There are children who are so confused about this and they have nowhere to turn. And then they see themselves in a book and then they write to the author and they say, by reading your book, I decided to carry on, literally saving lives. There is no good society that has ever been improved by the banning of books. So again, if there's a book you don't want to read, there's a genre you don't like, that's all fine. That decision has got to stay between you and your family. So we focus on an author every week, and it is truly one of the most enjoyable things we do. We have a podcast on it. We had a season 1. We're gonna bring it back. We're gonna have season 2. And the best thing about it, Sri, is it's a book club. We actually read the books and we talk about the books with the authors. It's not because the reasons for banning books, there are only like 3 or 4 of them. They're age old. There's nothing particularly new about any of them. It's people are either prudish or they don't want you to have alternate stories or whatever the case is. The books are actually really interesting. And you've been every bookstore you go to now, Sri, it's got a banned book section.
Yes.
Like it curates reading for people. It's amazing. There are people who are reading books that they wouldn't have even thought about reading, and how better to learn about other people's experiences than reading it in their own words.
Excellent, folks. Thanks for getting him all hyped up for showtime, says Lily Corvo. Dr. Tachi says, love the banned book club. And Neil has put in a link to the book club. You can find it right on your website. You can find it there, but it's msnbc.com/Velshi, and then look for the banned book club. We have just a couple of more minutes left. Any final comments, folks, please feel free to send them in to us. We'll show them to Ali later. Ali will also share this on his Facebook later as well when he has time. So before we let you go, we want to tell everybody that this is the New York Times Read Along, usually 8:30 to 10 a.m. on Sundays. And we end so that we don't compete with Ali. And if Rebecca and you want to talk about us hyping your show before we go, we bring you on before you go to your show once in a while, that would be fun as well.
Oh, what a pleasure. It's amazing. I think Rebecca's going to say it all worked out just fine because she got me meddling less in the show. So you might actually, I'm curious, the viewer might see a better show today than normal.
That's really funny. And but we'll be back 8:30 a.m. next week and going on other Sundays. And so please join us and please connect with me on @Sri and Twitter and @SriNet on Instagram. And before we have Ali talk about his book one last time, we want to tell everybody about my newsletter where we just talked about AI, and we talk a lot about AI. I'm on Substack, srinet.substack.com. One of my things, Ali, that I'm really mad about is this thing, hallucinations. They're not hallucinations. They're mistakes. They're errors. They're big effing deals, but we let them off the hook. By the way, that's supposed to be me and Elvis.
Yes.
And it also said I'm the speechwriter of Bill Clinton and executive editor of the New York Times. My late mom would have loved that.
Congratulations, my friend.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So with that, folks, we want to thank Ali Velshi, but we're going to ask him, we're going to put him on full screen. Maybe I'll hold the book. So we'll make me and the book a little small on the side so you can talk about why everybody should get the book, and also remind everyone where they can find you on tour in the next few days.
Well, look, it is meant to be inspirational, but I will say it's not meant to be a lesson. In other words, I just wrote it to be a good read. It's a fun story, and most people who read this will see something of themselves and their families in it. But the point is to inspire people in a time in which it sometimes can be a little bit hard to be inspired, particularly when you're looking at global affairs and politics and you're thinking it all feels a little bit overwhelming. Well, my point in the book is it doesn't have to. There's something that we can all do to make the world immediately around us a better place. And without doing that, you're not making the world a better place. You can't just solve the big problems in the world. Solve a lot of the little problems, and what you will do is you will find yourself motivated to do more. You will run into the people who will solve the big problems. You'll want to support them, and you will feel a lot more potent in society. One of the things about the mood we're in the world is it can make you feel like you can't make a difference. And the whole point of my book is you absolutely can make a difference. I'm going to be in Philly on Tuesday. I'll be in Washington on Wednesday. I'll be in Baltimore on Thursday. I'll be in New York on Friday, then back to California next week. And once we're done with the next couple of weeks, we're going to find new places to go across America, because I really want to hear from the people who watch our show about how we can together make this country better, more prosperous, and have a great future.
Ron says, great show as always, Dr. Tachi. Thank you so much, Ali, for visiting with us today. This is so good. Pradnya says, as usual, the read along grows her to read pile, and so many other great comments coming in. Stefan says, Ali's insight into banned books is a soundbite to remember. Thank you for all you do. So final thought before we let you go.
My final thought is to remind people who watch this who you are. You are an OG. For those of us journalists, I'm not a young man anymore, but when I was, you were a guy I look up to. You were one of the firsts in a lot of places. You really are central to a lot of the discussion. So you're not a commentator who happens to be reading the news. You really know a lot about our business and where it's gone. So I want to just express a lot of appreciation for the work that you do. And by the way, the work that maybe everybody doesn't see that you do as a mentor and a supporter of young journalists. It always mattered. It matters a lot more right now. So a tribute to you, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I want to say thank you for your support of the wonderful work of SAJA, the South Asian Journalists Association. You've been there for us every step of the way, and that's why SAJA is so proud to work with you. And we'll never forget you came to DC for our convention in gala dinner in 2015 or so, and that was so much fun. Folks, this is the great Ali Velshi. Thank you for being here. You can see him on Real TV. I'm just playing a TV host. This is make-believe TV. Real TV is coming up at 10 a.m. Eastern. And what's it like to compete with Fareed at the same time? What does it say about America? That
he's a great. Fareed and I had our offices were next to each other at CNN. Yes. For years. So he's a remarkable friend. I actually write about him in the book because he set me up on a beautiful trip in India years ago. My two of my heroes in the business I compete against, Christian Amanpour on Saturdays and Fareed on Sundays. So what an honor. What an amazing thing. I won't say that I compete with them because they're heroes of mine, but just to be in the same arena as they are is a very, very big deal for me.
And I will say, for all the criticisms you and I and others make of America, the fact that in America today, there can be folks like us and you, especially you and Fareed, be the leading explainers of America to the world and the world to America, says something about America, even today.
I agree with that.
Yeah, all right.
On that, we will. Here.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much, Ali. And we'll let you go.
Thank you. I had to get on before you left, Ali. Thank you so much. This was incredible.
I'm going to talk to Rebecca and see if we can do this again sometime.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Much shorter and right before you go on. Thank you. Bye-bye. And folks, stay on. We're going to read the paper. Neil's going to help us read the paper and talk about the news. Neil, what an incredible conversation. And he was just amazing, just as we knew he would be. And to be able to talk like that, to be a man of convictions is so important. And he has them. And that he has the space to talk about them is really important as well. And that's why the work he does, it matters. And that's why when you came, you asked him about 8 a.m. or he asked about 8 a.m., you said sure, because it's a little different for our audience, but we have got some great shows coming up, but always at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and of course recorded so people can watch.
Absolutely. And if we're giving people just a heads up in terms of our upcoming shows, I want to remind folks that next week is Mother's Day. So we actually won't have a show next week. We will be spending time with Our spouses here in New York and DC will be thinking of our moms, of course. My mom in New York, Sri, of course, you lost your mom. This is your second Mother's Day without her. So I'm sure that it'll be difficult. So I want to let you know we're thinking of you as well. The week after, on May 19th, Alex Accounts will be joining us. He's the executive director of the India Philanthropy Alliance and the executive and ran India Giving Day. So that should be a very interesting show, and we're looking forward to that. As a reminder, we wanted to let folks know about this great event coming up at the American Folk Art Museum.
I want to jump in and tell everybody that our friends at the American Folk Art Museum are hosting a benefit event for the museum with the great creator of Pussy Riot. Nadia is going to be there. If you're in New York, you want to be there May 16th. Check out the AFAM website and learn all about this opportunity to spend time with someone. We talked a lot about Russia on the show, or not enough maybe, but we talked a little bit about it. But somebody who called attention to the problems in Russia long before anybody else through music and creativity. Nadia, please check out her work and check out the American Folk Art Museum. And we want to remind everyone of Neil's shows. Yeah, Neil shows A Shining Light on Shadows. He hosted with Don Helmrich, a candid conversation about mental health. Tell us about this Thursday.
So I want to, this Thursday in particular, parenting a child with mental health challenges. Kate Easton is going to be our guest, but both Kate and Dawn have very specific, very personal stories they're going to share. Kate wrote a blog post. We'll be publishing it later today. But when your child struggles with bipolar, everyone struggles. And the pull quote, amidst the chaos and the pain, there was a glimmer of clarity. My son was not himself. He was a prisoner of his own mind, controlled by forces beyond his control. And Sri, Kate's story, rock bottom was the day that her son had a complete breakdown and attacked her physically in their driveway, both physically and verbally. And they were able to come back from that. So it's both a really gripping story, but also inspirational. For Dawn, my son's struggle with social anxiety and the difficulty of getting help. One day, her son told her the world was not set up for kids like him, kids that have social anxiety. And he was only in, like 12 or 13 at the time, Sri. And just the idea of going out to parties, playing in sports, etc. It's not organized for people who really can't engage in the world in that same way. So as we've talked about, I suffer from anxiety and occasional depression. And we started this show in February to shine a light on these shadows, to raise awareness, to reduce the stigma of mental health. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're particularly proud to be doing this show. And again, Digimentors is supporting this show fully. You and the rest of our colleagues have been there since the beginning. Thank you so much, Sri, for all the support that you give to this very important topic.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. Very brave for you to talk. And this is where the small acts of courage don't all have to be about politics, right? It's about shining a light on the shadows, literally the title of your show. Folks, I'm going to get ready for not to church as Calvin is, but I'm getting ready for a board meeting of the South Asian Journalists Association. We mentioned it earlier with Ali, saja.org, saja.org. Check it out. So Neil, as much time as you can give to read the paper so that we have it for the record. We encourage everyone to stay and watch Neil. There's a great New York Times Magazine cover. Look at that. This is about Brittany Griner's journey and out of Russian captivity and back to herself. And this is Unbroken by Jenny Wortham. Definitely worth checking out and staying for. Neil's going to show you all this. We're going to miss you all on Mother's Day, but we will be back with a great series of shows most of the summer. And if you'd like to be a guest, email us, neil@digimentors.group, sri@digimentors.group. If you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, let us know. If you'd like a show like this, notice how much back and forth there is with our audience. Notice that I'm also available to be to MC your events or anything like that you'd like to do. If you'd like a fully produced show like this, that Neil puts on, let us know. We'd love to talk to you. And we also do event amplifications. We blow up events. If you are doing a physical event, we can blow that up for you. Also, if you want a podcast, let us know. That's all under the banner of our work for Digimentors, which is at digimentors.group. Check it out. And we also do marketing, PR, training, workshops. I'm doing AI workshops around the world. If you'd like to have me come in virtually or in person, let me know. We've done it in 10 countries already. We're doing AI policy, scenario planning, strategy. To talk about any of those things, please do get in touch, digimentors.group. And a special reason to visit digimentors.group is to check out the free PDF that you can download of this crazy multifold issue of New York Times Cooking, which is available. You look for NYTReadalong at digimentors.group. Go there, and you've got a free gift link as well as the PDF for how you can make an effortless dinner or an elaborate dinner. And we look forward to seeing you all. Neil, thank you. As
Absolutely.
he thanked his EP, I want to thank our EP for doing such a great job every week. He's going to read the paper with you folks. Going to see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank
Talk
you,
to you
Sri.
soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. What a great show with Ali Velshi. And it just is incredible. Some of the comments we're getting on Instagram as well. I always want to make sure we try and get our Instagram folks. There's Sri saying goodbye. Peter said the banned book club is the best. Thanks for giving these authors that platform. That was a comment about Ali Velshi's banned book club. And then Simon said, Lisa on Instagram, great show today. Thank you so much, Sri and Ali. So folks, hopefully you'll be able to stay for just a little bit and we'll just look at some of the newspaper, some of the comments first before we do that. Thank you, Sujana, for saying that it was such an important subject, talking about mental health. Really appreciate that. And she also gives a strong recommendation to Digimentors from all the ear surgeons in the US. Yes, we've produced several events for Sujana and her colleagues. And I can't tell you how many videos I had to sit through showing actual ear surgery. These are the sacrifices I make for the job, is to watch some of that stuff. But it has been an honor and a pleasure to work with you, Sujana. Some of the comments that we saw earlier as we were wrapping up. Ron Thomas saying, good show as always. And Dr. Tachi, thanking Ali for joining us. And Ken Fisher saying, thank you so much, Ali and the New York team for letting him appear, but also Sri and Neil and whomever else produced this. Kevin, I can say this, it's Sri and Neil, and that's it. We are a two-person show, and occasionally, as you know, when I guest host, it's a one-person show. So thank you, everyone, for all of your support and your enthusiasm for our work. Miriam Berkeley said, great show. Paulo, awesome show. Have a great week. And Donato Vaccaro as well. Lots of inspiration and learning this morning. Thank you to everyone. So with that, if we still have folks watching, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the paper that Sri was not able to get to. He did go through the front page, but we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive and see what's there in the paper. We have just about 18 minutes. We'll take the show to our usual end of 10 a.m. Eastern time. So we went through the front page. We'll set that aside. We looked at that special cooking section. You definitely want to take a look at that. Effortless versus elaborate. Host a dinner party with minimal work, or go all out with an extravagant menu. Again, you can find that on the website for this show. The Sunday opinion section I thought was really interesting. This is peak admissions absurdity. At selective schools, increased competition, a disastrous financial aid system, and no holds barred tactics have left stressed out applicants feeling that they're in a game of chance. How college admissions broke in 2024. That's in the opinion section. And as we flip through, Some of the other pieces that they have on the left-hand side, witness portraits of the people living the news. And you can't see the caption here, but you can see the picture. I was one of the black students who took over Hamilton Hall at Columbia University in 1968 to protest against systemic racism. Times have changed, but I have a lot of respect for the protesters who are using peaceful means to fight injustice and who have the courage to take personal risks to try to make a difference in the world. It's important to follow your moral compass and act on what you truly believe in. Akusa Barthwell Evans, New York City. I know a lot of folks watching, a lot of folks in our circle are Columbia grads or live in the Upper West Side. My mom got her MSW from Columbia. I learned to walk on the steps of Butler Library. It's a special place for a lot of us. We spent many, many years there, of course. Incredible to see what we saw on the news earlier this week. I think Ali mentioned Jamel Bowie earlier, the price we pay for rich lawmakers. Where are all the working class politicians is the question that he is asking. Another piece over here, we are talking about the case against Trump all wrong. Let's see, what else do we have in? So this is the centerpiece for the opinion section. 2024 was the year that finally broke college admissions. It's a 2-page spread with a huge graphic in the middle, and you can see the bottom half of the article as well. So very interesting piece that folks will want to take a look at. Don't blame the teenage players, blame the game. Some of the subheads I'll just read out for you. The early bird gets the dorm. Unstandardized testing, the power of a no. A free market in financial aid. And can any of this be fixed? And the finish line. There's a piece about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, as she's known, a veteran political operator. That goes across the top of the page. 3 terms in, the progressive lawmaker is earning a reputation as a builder of bridges. And then a few more pieces at the end. So we'll take a look. And this is interesting. So I know that the Times has had these video interviews, quitting Congress, the exit interviews. Even the insiders are fed up with Washington. This year, 8 senators and 44 representatives are not running for re-election. To understand why the Times opinion put the same 8 questions to 12 members of Congress representing both parties. They explained why they believe the legislative branch is broken, described their accomplishments and frustrations, and spoke frankly about salary pressures, and identified their favorite perks of elected office. So I saw videos online, but the Times, the back page, turned it into a little bit of a cartoony graphic, which I thought is an interesting way of presenting the information. Definitely more accessible for folks, and we'll certainly want to take a look at that a little bit later. And Sojourner is saying that was a really great piece on AOC. So thank you. This is obviously Sunday business, but we'll put that AOC piece back up just for reference. There we go. The meet Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, veteran political operator. That's what Sujana was talking about. Thank you. And Dr. Tachi is saying, interesting, you need to read that article. Which article, Dr. Tachi? Which article were you referring to? If you need the link, let me know. I certainly can share it after the show. A little hard to do it while I'm hosting and reading through the paper at the same time. Sunday business. Again, I like making a point about the graphics that the Times uses. So they're using this cartoony graphic for the cover of Sunday Business. And it's all about TikTok. Love it, hate it, or fear it. How TikTok changed our culture. That will certainly be something worth taking a look at inside. I know we've had some really great discussions about TikTok with recent guest Lippy Roy was a guest just about a month ago or so ago, 2 months maybe, and as well as Dr. Geeta Nair as well. And Dr. Tachi was talking about the 12 not running for re-election. Absolutely. I'm a slacker. So, Oh, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Explain yourself. I want to know what you mean by that. What kind of slacker am I? How TikTok changed us. Has there ever been a more expressively American app than TikTok, with its messy democratic creativity, energetic exhibitionism, utter lack of limits, and vast variety of hustlers? And a byline by Sapna Maheshwari. Interesting layout, kind of reflecting a vertical feed, if you will. It's almost okay. So there, it looks like several pages of this. There's Taylor Swift in the top left corner. As a Swiftie dad, always have to give her a shout out, and a picture, some pictures over here. It won the snobbiest gatekeeper. Interesting. It looks like, it almost looks like a special section. Is this? It's not advertised as a special section, but it looks like they did a takeover. How TikTok changed us. It spawned a zillion trends, or at least trends. Yeah, a whole section just on TikTok. Interesting. I did not see that coming. And it led to self-diagnosis becoming an epidemic. It's for shopping and brand development. So interesting special section on TikTok from Sunday Business. Oh, that's what it is. Can't share a link while doing my two other jobs. Well, if that's how you're going to be, Sujana, we can just take care of that, because which article was it now? Now I got to go back. See, when you're pushing me like that, let's see. The piece on AOC, huh? Well, here is the piece on AOC just for you. So now, can I talk and look for AOC at the same time? That's the question. Oh, that's an opinion, isn't it? Let's get that one right for you. See, now I can't find it. I shouldn't have opened my mouth. Let's see. I will have to look for it later. See, I couldn't do it. I am a slacker. I'll take it. I'll take it. Aparna saying, are there many American fathers who are not Swiftie dads? Nope, not really. Not really at all. Let's see, what else do we have here? Sunday Styles. Ready to get maximum weird. Miranda July considers freedom, sexual and otherwise, in her new novel. Another article about TikTok. TikTok's boss takes on a flashy gig. Let's set that aside as we're approaching 9:50. Arts and leisure. It's comfortable, too comfortable. Mid-TV is polished, professional, and cinematic, but where's the ambition? Not sure what mid-TV is. Let's take a look at page 12 to dig into that. TV so well made it underwhelms. A few years ago, Atlanta and Pen 15 were teaching TV new tricks. In Atlanta, Donald Glover sketched a funhouse mirror image of Black experience in America and outside it, telling stories set in and around the hip-hop business with an unsettling comic surreal language. In Pen 15, Maya Erskine and Anna Conkley created a minutely observed, universally a specific picture of adolescent awkwardness. Interesting. Very, very interesting. We have the book review. Sri was showing that right before he left. We Stand Divided. Justin Taylor's novel Reboot examines the convergence of popular entertainment, online arcana, and conspiracy theory. And there's that New York Times Magazine cover story on Brittany Griner. Brittany Griner's journey out of Russian captivity and back to herself. One of the things that we have not done recently is read the poem. And if I can find the poem this time, I remember one time I went looking for it and I couldn't find it. But we would like to read it if we can. And that's what flipping through we have. So let's see. Read Like the Wind, Indian Idol. See, this is serendipity. Flipping through, I was grateful for the absence of conflict. We tuned into a world where everyone was a winner. Interesting. And let's see, here is rest. And this is the Brittany Griner story. Some stark photography there on the March afternoon. When I met Brittany Griner in Phoenix, the wildflowers were in peak efflorescence in California. There's Brittany's story. Here's an interesting piece. Issa Amro's war, the Palestinian activist is trying to pursue nonviolent resistance at a time when violence has become inescapable. Photographs by Paolo Pellegrin, story by Nicholas Casey. So no poem this week, unfortunately, but this is the magazine. And then this piece on history. A new legal standard is gaining traction among conservative judges, one that might turn back the clock on drag shows, gun restrictions, and more. So you see this overlaid picture of the Supreme Court with justices from, looks like at least, I'd guess 100 years ago, and an almost map of the United States. And that looks like it's it for the magazine. Folks, thank you very much for joining us. We did a quick look at the paper at the end of the show, but we appreciate everyone sticking around just for a little bit. Yes, now that I'm sitting at my computer, I can try and find that AOC article, which was really surprising that it didn't come up on the, there we go, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you don't know. Here's that link in Facebook. And I'll even drop it in YouTube for Dr. Tachi, since I know that's where she's watching and she doesn't get the benefit of getting all the links. Dr. Tachi, sorry about that, but that's again, since I'm a slacker, I can't drop links. I don't drop links into every channel, Facebook, occasionally LinkedIn, but here it is. Folks, again, thank you for joining us. Doug, thank you for sticking with us to the end. Dr. Tachi as well. And I got the emojis from Dr. Sujana, which is a great way to end the show. Again, as a reminder, we will not have a show next week. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. And just want to acknowledge that Mother's Day is not the easiest day for everyone in our circles. So for folks who are able to spend time with their mothers, we're glad you're able to do that. For folks who are not in a position to do that, for those for whom it's a little more of a stressful time or more of a sad occasion, our hearts go out to you, and we'll be thinking of you. We look forward to having you join us the week after on May 19th. Thank you very much, and we look forward to talking to you later. Naomi, thank you for saying looking forward to seeing our Thursday show, Shining Light on Shadows. What a privilege it is to spend Sunday morning with you, and now every 2 weeks, Thursday evenings as well. Have a great week, 2 weeks for the read along, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.